All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to JHS Interviews. My name is John Henry Soto, and I am super, super excited to have my guest here. This is David Doc Watson. This dude is the man. He is in Bayonne. I couldn't believe it when I heard that Doc was lives in Bayonne. I was like, holy cow. And I think we met for the first time. We were judging a talent show, I believe. And that was the first time I actually officially met you, and it was a great honor. So I'm glad that we got to stay in communication. And when I came up with this little venture of mine here during this pandemic, I decided I don't have to go out, and I got a list here of all the names of everybody that I would beg to just have a conversation with me, and your name was definitely on the top of that list. So I appreciate you very much for taking the time. Um, so right before we came on, and I know I had a list of questions, but you had said so. We were talking, and I know you worked with the Sugar Hill Records for probably from the beginning, right?
Pretty much so. Sugar Hill was like Motown. Like
Yeah,
Motown had the same rhythm section, background vocals, the horns. They used the same guys on all of the artists on their label. And
right.
Sugar Hill Gang did the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Wood, brass, and steel. Okay, all of you nerds out. Oh, no, let me say that. Not nerds, but all of you hip music history folks, look up wood, brass, and steel. The members of that rhythm section were the rhythm section at Sugar Hill.
Wow.
And they hired
Yeah. Yeah.
Chopshorns as their in-house horn section, and they had a horn arranger by the name of Jiggs Chase. Now, Jiggs was a jazz organist from Jersey. I don't know where they found this cat, but he did all of these horn arrangements. And the thing was, we played this stuff, but we didn't do the chops arrangements because we
Right.
were still molding our sound. And
Right.
to be in the studio on a regular basis, we worked with them for about 3 years, and we averaged somewhere between 30 and 50 songs a year.
Wow.
So we were in the studio every month, you
Holy
know.
cow.
Now, funny story is we were only making $75 a man per song.
Wow.
With the going rate now is around 400.
Right. Right.
Okay. But this was 78, 79. We were fresh out of college.
Yeah.
Darryl and I were fresh out of college. And, we were trying, as they say in the music business, we were trying to get on, yo.
Right.
So our way of getting on was to work cheap to get our name out there. Now,
Wow.
another thing a lot of people might not know is on a good portion of that stuff, the famous drummer Dennis Chambers, who
Yeah.
played a bunch of fusion stuff. He's got his own records out. He toured with a bunch of
Santana.
Santana for quite a few years.
Yeah, I
Remind
saw
me
him with Santana. Yeah.
Remind me about that later. I'll tell you a Santana story. But
Oh Lord.
I wanted to start two Santana stories. I wanted to start this interview with wishing Stevie Wonder a happy
Yes.
birthday.
And
Today,
before that, one of the reasons that I was gonna say was that you play on Apache, and that song for me was, growing up in the South Bronx in the mid '80s, that
right.
was the song. That
Yeah,
was the
man.
song and it's still the song. It's still being like used everywhere. Anyway, I just wanted to say amazing, thank you, and happy birthday, Stevie Wonder. So, what you got
Okay.
for us?
This is for Stevie. Okay, I don't want to go too far into that
Yeah.
because I could play the whole song. Or
Right.
you heard we came in, we just went by up. That was the
Yeah.
beginning. We have a horn break in the middle of that. So if you look up the birthday song. Now you mentioned I gotta play a little bit of Apache because you brought it up. Now I hear Apache on commercials.
Really? Wow. It's really an important song actually when you look at it historically also. You know,
Uh-huh.
it's up there with those early, Sugar Hill Gang rhythms and,
1, 2, 3, 4. Liberty, liberty,
Right. Sorry about the Liberty. I couldn't get past that.
it's all right.
Now, there was a dance that went with this.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I was a ghetto celebrity breakdancer back in them days.
Okay.
Bump. Oh, yeah. Yeah, yes.
Bam. Bump.
That's right.
All right. You remember that now?
Lord.
Did I just bring you back?
I did. You brought me way back. Holy cow.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
So tell me, the experience of coming out of college and heading into a situation like that, the pressures, was the pressure, because I've heard stories of the Motown years and, other studios like that, Stax and all those guys that played in those, the kind of the session musicians that really played a lot of songs that people don't even know that it really wasn't the artist that even played the full song. It was really, they hired these musicians to just knock out the studio tracks and then send the actual band, the wrecking crew and stuff like that. Did you feel a lot of pressure during those years, like to kind of like compete with those guys that did that, like, that came out before you?
Well, let me reel you in a little and take you back just a little before that so you can see the context. When I was in college, I met a gentleman by the name of Darryl Dixon. He was an alto sax player, and he used to do a lot of playing with a trombone player, Clarence Lowry. They were the only two African Americans in the Jersey City State Jazz Band, because back then it was run by Dick Lowenthal, who had a tendency of wanting all white musicians. Don't ask me why. I'm not. It's not for me to say. It's not for me to say. But he had a predominantly white band. I was a senior in high school, and I go hear this band, and I see Clarence trombone. I see Darryl. They stuck out because on that white background,
right.
Seeing a brown brother was kind of easy. So
right.
I waited around till after the concert, and I met them, and I fell in love with their playing. So they were the guys that, believe it or not, recruited me for Jersey City State. My music teacher at the time in high school, my choir director, Mrs. Nelson, she was pushing me to go to Berkeley in Boston because she felt I was talented enough. But what I'd like to say to all you young aspiring musicians is believe in yourself. Because what happens when you're young, you're a little scared,
Yeah.
And I was afraid, man. What? You want me to leave my house and go stay up in another state with a bunch of folks I don't know, and I don't know how good they play. They don't know how good I play. I was too afraid. I'm not gonna front. I really wish I would have went, because a lot of the major players still today, they go to Berkeley and they listen to the graduating seniors or juniors, and they pull these guys in their band when they graduate. Marcus Miller is great for that. A professional bass player. His alto player, Alex, who's all over the place. He's a beast. He got him from Berkeley. So I didn't go to Berkeley. I saw Darryl and Clarence, so I locked on to somebody at Jersey City State. I stayed at home with my dad, and we kind of made it work. Now, parents today might not push as hard as my father did. I had a couple options. One, go to college. I could stay at home. Two, don't go to college. Go get a full-time job and pay rent if I wanted to stay at home. And if I couldn't do that, hit the road, Jack. Get your own apartment, do your own thing. So I decided to stay home. So Jersey City State is where I met these guys, and Darryl had a horn section doing work in Philly. And my first year in college, I developed a horn section to do gospel stuff. Rick Freestat, where you at in Florida? Doug Roth house. Yeah. All my college buddies. So we were doing work for Savoy Records, and that's the first gospel stuff I did, Savoy Records. Now, Darryl was working in both horn sections, in my horn section and in his own. He told me, hey, let's combine the horn sections and give one section all of the work. You'll get the Philly work. My guys will get the work up here. We did that. We called the horn section Chopshorns. I think Darryl came up with that name. And we had Melvin L. on trombone and Marvin Daniels on trumpet. They were Philly guys. We had one rehearsal. We got together to go over some music. And for those of you that don't know, most music, classical and rock alike, they put articulations on top of the notes to tell you whether to play a long note, short note, and that kind of stuff. We had no articulations on the music, and all four of us phrased exactly the same way. So that's when we knew, we had something going. And that's how Chops was formed. Darryl would have to tell you the story of who we met. Oh, Darryl's father knew Jigs Chase, the organ player. Do you remember where he was from? Jigs Chase, I said, did the horn arranging at Sugar Hill. Darryl's dad knew him, who just passed recently at 93 years old.
Wow, God bless.
Yeah, rest in peace, brother. Wow. He turned us on to Jigs. Jigs brought us in to check us out on a session, fell in love with us, and kept us for many, many years. Melvin L. had diabetes, so he had some teeth problems. So during that tenure at Sugar Hill, we brought in Robin Eubanks, who's from the Eubanks family. His brother was on one of the Tonight shows for many years. He has another brother who plays trumpet. He plays trombone. He filled in for Booney, who we call Melvin. And he played on a lot of those records as well. So that's how we got to Sugar Hill. And like I said, we were averaging 30 to 50 songs a year. And we homed our studio sound at Sugar Hill.
And it also prepares you for, it makes you so tight because you got to play tight when you're in the studio. You can't. It's not. You can't be on. You can't be on stage, and it's not a stage gig. So that carries on to stage performances. That's. Tell me, what was your earliest?
You know what? Before you get to that question, I never really answered your first question, which was, did we feel pressure? Were we nervous? No, we were doing what we loved. It's kind of like, it's kind of like a guy that played basketball in college and gets into the pros.
Right.
There's a little bit of nervousness, but it's like, man, I'm living my dream. How many people can say that? Not many. So there wasn't a lot of nervousness. Now you got to remind me about Santana, and we got to talk a little bit about Stevie. But what's your next question?
Yeah. Well, what I was going to ask was, did you? Well, actually, I'm going to hold off on that question now, because I think that because it's Stevie Wonder's birthday, we opened with a song. We talked about Stevie Wonder. I kind of want to hear a little bit about Stevie. And then afterwards, maybe we can jump into some Santana stories. Okay. And then I'll go back to my questions.
Okay. Well, Stevie Wonder could play all the instruments. So, they say a double threat, a triple threat. This guy, man, he played everything. The first story I'd like to tell you is Stevie Wonder got inducted into the Apollo Hall of Fame. At the time, Chopshorns was the in-house horn section for the Apollo band from Ray Chew and the crew. Can everybody say that? Ray Chew and the crew. Now, Ray has moved on about 6, maybe even 8 years ago now. He has moved on to working in LA, and he is now the musical director for Dancing with the Stars.
Ah, okay.
So he's doing a lot. He really, as they say, blew up.
Wow.
Deservingly so, talented guy. I have so many stories of what this man taught me throughout the business. We will be here till tomorrow. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to tip my hat to Mr. Ray Chu for all that he's done for Chops, because we had a 15-year solid working relationship where he didn't use anybody else when he was in New York.
Wow.
That has changed because he's blowing up. He's got so many people, coming at him. So he still uses us, but not like he used to.
Yeah.
So we're doing the Apollo for Stevie being inducted into the Hall of Fame. Now, they didn't record these shows.
Oh.
They weren't televised. But brother, I did one for Lionel Richie and all the people on the show. Natalie Cole.
Oh my God.
And these are a full band singers. She'd bring on people. So Stevie had Chick Corea on the show. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the guy from David Letterman? Paul Schaefer. Schaefer. I think Yolanda Adams, gospel person, and Tony Bennett.
Holy cow.
They kind of talked about him and then they played. When Tony Bennett came to the microphone and opened his mouth, dust came out of his mouth. I was like, that dude was so old. He had to be in his 90s. But he covered a Stevie Wonder song on one of his records, and it became, I think, For Once in My Life. For Once in My Life.
Yeah. I've heard him do that.
Yeah. He put that on one of his records, and it became his biggest album.
Wow.
And when Stevie went up to hug him by the microphone, Stevie said, this man here was down with the brothers when it wasn't cool to be down with the brothers. Nice. We're talking 50s, 60s.
Yeah.
There was a lot of separation. So, all right. So Tony starts singing For Once in My Life, and Chick Corea starts playing along, right? Paul Schaefer jumps in on the organ. Chick looks around at the band like to say, what y'all doing? Now, this was Ray Chu's band. Nobody could direct Ray Chu's band when he was on stage. Ray had a real rule. This is my band. I don't care what any of these artists say. Don't do a thing until I tell you to. So they're playing. He's looking back for the band. The band wouldn't play because Ray Chu.
They follow the rules. They follow the rules, man.
Ray had nodded his head to say, okay. So the band's looking at Ray. So Ray nodded his head and they came in, right? And they're playing on For Once in My Life. This is all impromptu, by the way. No rehearsal. Right. But everybody knows all the Stevie stuff.
Yeah.
So we're playing the stuff, and Stevie's standing there, and Tony's singing. Got to a part of the song. Stevie went in his pocket and pulled out his harmonica. And he turned out on a harmonica standing next to Tony, and Chick was doing, then Chick took it to like a little Latin feel. I was through. We never played, by the way, the horns. We were too scared. We didn't want to mess up. So we just sat there and listened. And
that must have been amazing.
And during that same show, Stevie was playing electric piano. Chick was playing acoustic piano, and Paul Schaefer was playing organ, and they were doing a song as a trio. Now I'm saying to myself, man, not for nothing, Paul Schaefer's good.
Yeah.
But he's totally outclassed.
Yeah.
With Chick Corea and Stevie Wonder. Come on. We're not taking anything away. We love you, Paul.
Yeah.
He was outclassed. So I'm sitting there like, let's see how he gets out of this one. Because I knew these dudes was going to play rings around him, right?
Right.
So everybody starts playing. And Paul taught me a big lesson that night. And this goes for all you other young musicians. When you're playing with a group and people are better than you, stay in your lane. Don't be trying to do all the stuff.
Don't try.
Yeah, don't try to do what they're doing. No, do what you do and stay in your lane. Paul started just doing some comp chords on the organ and playing some colors and sweetness, and he let them go off. And it was bellissima.
Wow.
So that was my my Apollo story. I do have another Stevie story if you want to hear it.
Of course.
Okay.
I mean, if you have the time, I want to hear stories.
Oh man, this is another great Stevie story, and I tried to incorporate in my stories little lessons for you young cats out there that might get some of these opportunities, so you won't do some of the stupidness that I did. All right. This was we were at rehearsal in New York at SIR, and we were preparing for a performance at the UN with Stevie.
Wow.
He was hosting the show, and he had all these artists, and Sting happened to be one of the artists, which I had traveled with for 13 months. And Sting came with his wife, so we're hugging and thing, and the people in the band are looking like, damn, he knows Sting. And hey, Danny, Danny is Sting's roadie, who's still with him today. We played with the Police back in the 80s. So 80, 90, he's been with them for 30 years. Okay.
Wow.
But my point was, we're at the rehearsal, and Stevie's MD was his bass player. Now, when they came to New York to do this show, Ray Chew became the musical director because he was the guy, because it was streaming live. Mm-hmm. They wanted a guy to keep the show moving, not let songs go too long, because Stevie's in the jamming. He'll play one tune all night. So they brought in Ray Chew to corral the band. Now, the bass player felt a little salty because he was the big music director. Right. And a bad cat. He played on the majority of Stevie Wonder's records, by the way. If you look up The Key of Life, whoever played bass on that, that's the guy I'm talking about. Wow. So he's a little salty already. So he comes to rehearsal, and we're playing a song, I think, Where is Superstition? And it's got the horn part, bip, bip, right? Now, after that, we put our own little horn part in that wasn't on the record, right? So we're playing, and we put our little horn part in. My man looked over and kind of frowned. When the song was over, he said, man, that part ain't on the record. And me, with my stupid big mouth, said, I know, baby, but you working with chops. It's on this record.
Oh my God.
That was the most asinine thing to say. If I wanted to, what I should have said was, we know, sir, we humbly apologize. Is it okay for us to play that part? But no, I was doing good, man. I was successful and I was a freaking hothead. So, so I was like, and I said it just like that. Hey, baby, you playing with chops now. You in New York City.
Yeah. Hey, I think that sometimes that shows, it shows confidence. You know what I mean? I mean, and the fact that you were already playing at that level, it gives you some type of clout to be able to say something like that. I mean, it all depends on the moment too. You could also take it a little bit too far, but at the same time, you've earned
humility. The key.
Yeah.
Humility really is the key. And let me tell you, the best musicians I know, like people like Stevie and Chick Corea, all the people I've worked with on that level, they are all humble. Some of the singers could be little jerks, but all the musicians were real humble. The cats that had the attitude were the guys that really couldn't play that good.
Right.
So, I was kind of falling into that category, which I didn't want to put myself. So the musical director put it in his computer. He said, this dude gonna get wise with me? I'm gonna get him back. So now We're on the show. The UN is live, y'all. No second takes. It's being streamed. So whatever you play. The musical director forgot to inform the horn section that Stevie Wonder knows all of his songs in 12 keys. So he could play any song he wrote in any key. Depending on where his voice was, will depend on where he wants to play it. So this one particular song, can't remember the name, but he had flying horn parts in it. What Stevie would do is, which the musical director didn't tell me because I was an asshole. He forgot to tell me that Stevie comes out and plays a note on the piano, right? He plays a note, dun, dun, ding. That alerts the band what key the song is in.
Holy cow.
Okay, so I saw him hit the note. And I'm saying, I guess I didn't know why he hit the note. So while they're counting it off, the guitar player turns around and says, the song's up a step. And we were like,
wait, what?
So they fell in. They had like maybe 3 or 4 bars before the horns came in or whatever it was. So now we had the music in front of us, but we had to transpose or go
as you're playing. Like
live.
As you're playing, you're transposing.
At the UN with Stevie Wonder. Now you talk about pressure? What? Man, I had sweat running down the back of my neck. So, brother, I don't know how we did it, but all 4 of us transposed this song and did not make more than 2 mistakes. And the musical director lost his mind because he knew he had us.
Yeah.
He said, these guys are going to fall out over their face. They're going to sound terrible. And that's going to be payback for this dude opening his mouth.
Right.
When he saw us transpose on the spot and play, his jaw said, boing.
Yeah.
And from that point on, he had a mutual respect for us. After the gig, you know what I did. I went over and apologized to my man.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah.
I was saying, I hope you apologize.
Yeah, I went over to him and I said, yesterday we had a long night learning all this music. And, I was a little on edge, and I know you have 2 horn players from LA that they didn't let you bring. So you got stuck with us, but I just want you to know, I respect what you do. And please accept my humble apologies. He shook his head and said, yeah. He said, and by the way, where did you buy that hat? Because while I'm in New York, I want to buy some hats. So nice. That's when I knew we were okay.
We were okay, yeah. Wow.
So those are 2,
I love it.
2 Stevie stories. And the last one, which I'll keep real short, is within the Ray Chew Band, we used to do this thing called the BET Honors. And it was a TV show that honored 6 African-American personalities across the spectrum from business, music, sports. Okay. Now, these 6 people got to pick any musician that they wanted to play for them.
Wow.
And whoever they picked, Ray would find and they'd be on the show. And one of these people picked Stevie Wonder. I think, Alicia Keys was being inducted and she picked Stevie Wonder. And I had worked with her, as you know. So that was a nice reunion because we hadn't seen each other in a while. So when Stevie would sit down to check his instruments, his pianos and stuff, you'll never guess what he would play. He would play Giant Steps from John Coltrane.
Oh,
Bing,
wow.
boom, bam, boom, bam. And anybody that's out there that knows jazz, that's one of the most difficult songs to solo on. He'd play the head and then he'd just go in burning. And he'd warm up. Now we were doing, I think it might have been Superstition at rehearsal, and he's playing the clav part. Now Ray always had another keyboard player. And this particular gentleman, Russell was his name. He was playing kind of like the part Stevie was playing, the clarinet part. Right? Now, Stevie stopped and said, wait a minute. He said, there's another clarinet part on the record, and this is the part I want you to play. And when he played it, it like blew us all out, because when you listen to the record, you can't really hear that part.
Wow.
It was so syncopated. So he's trying to show it to Russell, and Russell is sweating bullets.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
He never heard this part, and he's got to pick it up from Stevie on the fly. And it was difficult rhythmically, you know?
Right.
So, I mean, Russell messed it up about 4 or 5 times, you know, but Stevie was patient, and he kept working with him until he got it. And that's another thing. Some artists aren't like that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I know some of these, I think I remember, I've heard, and I don't know, but I've heard that Ray Charles was like really, really tough, especially on his drummers. Well, apparently, like he would give them a really hard time, and if they were off by, because he had Ray Charles timing, it was his time. It wasn't, and it might not have been, you know, right on the one. It might have, but it was him. So the drummer had to kind of like look at him, kind of. So apparently he was rough, from what I've heard, but I don't know if that's.
If you remember in the beginning of our story, we were talking about Darryl and.
I can't remember.
Darryl and Clarence. I know it's like Clarence.
I've been so like overwhelmed, but I love it. But I'm like,
so Clarence and Darryl left college a year early to go to LA, and they wound up in the Funkadelics band.
Oh wow!
Okay, with George Clinton. Yeah,
George Clinton. Yeah,
and Darryl played the alto solo on Flashlight. When the alto comes in, that's Darryl. So they worked with the Funkadelics for a couple years. Darryl came back to Jersey. Clarence stayed in LA. And guess what band he got in?
Get out. Really? Ray Charles?
Ray Charles. So he used to tell us some of those Ray Charles stories. And the thing that used to blow his mind was Ray Charles had a jazz band, a stage band, 5 saxophones, 4 trombones, 4 to 5 trumpets, and a full rhythm section, right? They'd be at rehearsal and he'd say, wait a minute, second alto. He'd pick out one horn and say, man, let me hear your part. And the dude would play some, oh, that note right there. No, look at your music. That's a sharp. You're playing it natural.
Wow.
Out of 5. 9. 14. Out of 12 to 14 horns, he could hear the one wrong note. Yep. He had some killer ears. And that's the only real Ray Charles story that I know is true.
Yeah. Wow. Do you ever have trouble with people directing you, like a musical director that you kind of like, you guys get hired and it becomes because you hear so many stories of young musicians going in and getting just like their asses kicked, by somebody, and then they kind of lose their momentum, they lose their ambition, they just don't feel motivated anymore. But you've managed to work with the best of the best, and usually, like you said, at that level, there is a lot of humility, with a lot of these guys. But as you're coming up, you have to hit that middle ground, and sometimes that middle ground might have people that think they're there at the level, but they're not. They're not really operating on a sincerity.
Well, would you like a story?
Yeah. Tell me a story, Doc.
Okay. Remember I told you I was the hothead, the big mouth in the section. The trumpet player, Marvin, used to say when we'd go in the recording section, he'd say, Dave, do you have your muzzle? My what? Put that fucking muzzle on. Oops. Put that muzzle on. I don't want to hear you talking. Okay. So we're in the studio working for the Rolling Stones.
Oh my.
All right. The Rolling Stones. And they had this producer that was producing this session, which, you know, I can't say his name because that wouldn't be polite.
Right.
But this guy was getting paid crazy money because we were getting paid crazy money. And he's producing the session. So you know he was getting paid.
Right.
So he gave us these horn parts to play on one of their songs. And I kid you not, they were and we're playing the stuff. And I started getting pissed because this was the first time we're going to play for the Rolling Stones, and you're going to have us playing some damn string lines?
Right.
It wasn't horn parts, it was string shit. The dude didn't know how to arrange for horns. So you know what I said? I said, yo, my man, these sound like fucking string parts. These ain't horn parts.
Oh, wow.
I wrote the parts, you play the parts. Okay. And then Marvin looked over at me and did his hands like this, like,
why didn't you take the muzzle off?
Dave, what you doing? We had a Rolling Stone section and you gonna bark at the engineer? You gonna bark at the producer? Are you crazy? All right. So that session's over. Now, funny story. A year later, Mick contacts us to work on his solo project. So he had a brownstone in 85th Street, 84th Street, one of those, and he invited me over to discuss the music, right? I had a Plymouth Scamp at the time. I get to passing Journal Square, and my car says, and dies, okay? So now there's a gas station. If you're on the boulevard, right before you make the turn for the Holland Tunnel, there's a gas station there. So I pulled the car in the gas station. The dude said, man, we can't fix this now. So I got my little thing, my bag, put it on, and I ran back to Journal Square. Got on the train, got the trains uptown, ran to his house. I was 20 minutes late.
Oh, shit.
Drenched,
Right,
soaked. I mean, soaked. Face, soaked. And his guy comes, I guess I don't know if it was butler or his whatever he was. He comes and answers the door. This dude was built like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but short. And I walk in the house and there are columns, like Greek columns with statues in this brownstone on 86th Street. I mean, it looked like I was walking into the Waldorf. I'm like, what the fuck? Okay. So I come in, the dude brings me up a staircase. There's Mick. And I said, Mick, my car broke down, man. I'm so sorry. He could see I was drenched and breathing hard. He said, you know, I was late once. And I was like, oh, fuck. So then he says, look, why don't you go in the bathroom and, you know, dry yourself off? Okay. So I go in this bathroom and he had these towels that all had J's on them for Jagger. I'm like, what the fuck? And his shower opened up where there was a chair that you could put down and turn it into a steam shower. It was crazy. I mean, at the time, I had never seen anything like this.
Right.
So we go in and he's talking about what he wants on the record. And I asked him, I said, well, what about that last session we did for you? He said, I didn't use any of that. I said, what? He said, yeah, that producer, I didn't like what he did with my songs.
Wow.
So and then he said, after I paid him and told him I wasn't going to use it, he still tried to get radio stations and people that he knew to play the record. So I had to, you know, let my lawyer, you know, straighten him out and say, hey, you play that again, we're going to sue you. Right. He had already got paid probably $100,000 for whatever it was for all these songs. But I told you he didn't know horn parts. Right. I was trying to tell the fool, but he didn't listen. So Mick didn't use any of his stuff. Okay. Right. So Mick tells me what he wants. We get the song together. We're headed back to the studio. and he uses the same dude to record this stuff, which I thought was kind of strange, but I come to find out that he didn't like what the guy wrote, but he liked the sound that he got in the horn. He liked the way he mixed the horns and the way he recorded the horns, because it all depends on if you're using tube mics, condensers, you know, all kinds of different kind of microphones. This guy did know his shit when it came to that.
Yeah.
So we go back in. I said, "Oh, this is my time to make up, like I did with Stevie's guy." You know.
Oh no.
So I go in. Hey man, you know, so good to see you. He said, "Man, one thing. The only fucking reason you're here is because Mick Jagger asked for you, because I had another horn section that I wanted to use." So he never got over it.
Wow, he's still sitting on that.
He was still salty. Yeah. So we go in and we play our parts.
Right. The ones you guys wrote.
Yeah, we killed that session, man. Mick came to the session, and he on one of his songs, he wanted a muted trumpet solo. And we had a trumpet player, Danny, who has passed now. Well, he was a way worse hothead than I was.
Yeah.
But what a trumpet player. And my vibe back then, which has changed, but when I was younger, my vibe was, you can be a jerk if you want to be, but if you're a jerk, you better be able to play.
Right.
And Danny could back up his arrogance with his horn. He was a bad boy. So Mick says we had 2 trumpets on that. Oh shoot, I got a picture of that session.
Nice.
I could pull it down and show it to you if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, man. Let me. Man, that's so funny.
This is so awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you everybody for tuning in and watching. We're here with Doc Watson, telling us some amazing stories of some of the sessions that he's done in his career. And look at this.
How's that?
Tilted. I could see myself in it. Tilted a little bit up. Yeah, a little bit higher up. Nice, right there. I could see it right there. Nice.
Okay. So you see, I got an orange shirt on with matching orange sunglasses.
I see.
I was all the way live, brother. So
getting it done.
Yep. So I mentioned about Robin Eubanks, right? That's who was on trombone, because Booney wasn't there. It was me, Darryl, Danny on the end, and Gerald Shavers on the other end, the 2 trumpet players. We hadn't worked a lot with Gerald, but he was a Philly guy and real nice cat. All right, so we're in the studio. Mick is asking for a Miles Davis type solo. So Danny goes in with the mute and he's playing a bunch of stuff. Didn't sound like Miles. And Mick says, "Nah, that's not really it. Could you give me another take?" Gave him another take. He still wasn't sounding like Miles. So I go in the booth. "Danny, what's wrong?" He said, "Man, if he wanted Miles Davis, he should have fucking hired Miles Davis."
Oh, Lord.
I'm like, "Dude, that's Mick Jagger. Look," I said, "we got 2 trumpet players here. We got you and we got Gerald. You play some of that stupid stuff again, and Gerald will be in here in a heartbeat."
That's right.
And Danny got it. He gave him that Miles vibe. Okay. Mick loved it. When it came time for the record to come out, the Rolling Stones at that time, and this was crazy, most records had anywhere from 8 to 12 cuts on the album, right?
Right.
Rolling Stones would cut 28 to 30 songs per album every time they would go in.
Really? Wow.
They'd spend crazy money in the studio. Then they'd pick the best 8 from that bunch. So what that means, boys and girls, is the Rolling Stones has maybe to be, 50 to 100 songs in the can, which means nobody's ever heard that.
So maybe going to say that.
Maybe they're saving these songs for their grandkids, and their grandkids can put them out. I don't know, you know, the legal thing, but these dudes got a bunch of stuff in the can. So we worked for Mick 2 or 3 times. The first time we worked for him, 2 songs made the record. The second time we worked for him, 1 song made the record. The third time we worked for him, that solo that Danny did, that was the only thing that made the record. We didn't make the record. So Danny was complaining to me about doing it. He's the only one that made the record. When it came out and he had his name on that cover, he went around to all companies getting all this free equipment because he was the Rolling Stones trumpet player, where he wasn't. He was hired by Chopshorns. And I can tell you a bunch of stories of people that got hired by those guys. We brought them in the session. And if you go to their website, the top names that you see are the people that they worked on the record with us.
You guys.
Yeah, never, and they never mention Chopshorns. They say, you know,
that's not right.
I work with this guy, this guy, this guy. So this business can be a little weird, but I have a big heart. I'm giving, and it's treated me well. It really has.
No, I mean, you have a tremendous career. Now I wanted to talk a little bit, and we're gonna go back to stories, but I know that you've also have a tremendous background in education, you know, and I think that's one of the conversations that sometimes I fall into with, you know, I'm a musician. I've been playing for, you know, very, very long time, but I'm not a trained musician. I've never studied music. I basically just took books out of the library and taught myself how to play as a kid in the South Bronx, right? And what's your take on that? You know, people with education, do you think that kids are now moving towards it a little bit more than they were before, music education? You know, with all the hip hop and all the machines that do all this stuff, my fear is that musicianship is we're losing the art, you know. And I know that we'll always have somebody that comes up and loves it and will do it, but there should be a lot more people out there. I know guitar players are still popular, you know, because it's like everybody has a guitar, everybody plays a guitar, and but as far as like this kind of music, you know, like what's your thoughts on that, you know, as far as education goes and with your experience?
Okay. First of all, I'd like to talk about the uneducated musician that learns on his own. One of the best guitar players I know is Amir Bayan, that was the younger brother in Kool and the Gang.
Oh,
what a guitar player this guy was.
Really?
And because he didn't learn traditionally, you'd look at him play and he'd be playing like these 3-note things, but it sounded so huge.
Yeah.
And I would be like, yo, brother, how do you get such a big sound and you're only playing 3 notes? And he said something to me that I still remember today. And I was in high school at the time. He told me, he said, you know, Dave, when I hear a chord or something, I only hear 2 or 3 notes, and I call them the color tones, the pretty notes, you know? So, you know, in a chord situation, like you can leave out the root and the 5th, but if you play the 3rd and the 7th and the 9th, your ear hears the root and the 5th. You see, so there's certain way.
Right. We're
Right.
trained to kind of like almost put it in because from our ears are trained that way. Yeah.
Right. So instead of playing a whole chord, he played fragmented chords, but he sounded great. And he had such a rhythmic feel. So
nice.
And 99.9 of the gospel records that I played on and the gospel TV shows I've done, those cats don't read any music.
Wow.
And a bird could fly by and tweak, and they could play you the notes that bird sang.
Right.
their
Wow.
their ears were like, like
Yeah.
this big. They could hear everything.
Yeah. Well,
Which,
I heard a story once. You know Billy Sheehan?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, Billy Sheehan. So he did a workshop once where and I was there and I asked him a question about reading music because he doesn't read music. He's a
Right,
monster play. He played with Chick Corea. I'm like, how do you play with Chick Corea and you don't read music?
right.
But he said, one of the reasons why music notations was created was because back in the days there was no recording mechanisms.
Mhm.
So if somebody is playing a beautiful piece and there's no way to document it, he's got to figure out a way so that tomorrow he can come back and remember the same piece that he just came up with. So that's where the notations came about. And so he says the theory is important to kind of document what somebody's going to play, you know.
Right.
But today, with our phones and everything, people can just record their stuff. And there's so many musicians in history, like Santana and I mean, Jimi Hendrix and all these guitar cats that I used to follow, that didn't read music. And
Mhm.
so I mean, the reading music is not really so much what I'm focusing on, or what I'm more interested in music education, like learning about the history of music, you know how
Okay,
things developed, where
okay,
we are,
okay,
you know what I mean,
okay.
and that kind of a thing.
Well, uh, because my father played saxophone, um, it was instilled in me. And he was Doc Watson. I
Mm.
got the Doc name from my kids from Bayonne High School because when I started teaching, I used to fix some of their instruments because I had to learn how to fix my own instruments because I couldn't afford a repairman. So I learned how
Right.
to fix stuff. So I would fix little things, and they started calling me the doctor. And
uh
then
I
from
didn't
the
know
doc,
that.
from the doctor, it got knocked down to doc.
Right.
And I told him, I said, hey, that's what they call my dad. I'm not doc, he's doc. They said, well, you're our doc. So okay. So certain things were instilled in me. And my father told me, he said, look, if you want to go to college for music, so that's the only thing I would go for. He says, you got to go for an education degree, because if you get a performing degree, what do? You go on a gig and you bring your certificate and say, oh, look, I graduated from college. The band leader laughs and says, oh, come on, let me hear you play.
Right.
It's all about how good you are.
Right.
So to take those few extra education classes was so worth it for me. While I was in college and Chopshorns were formed, and I told you we were doing a lot of rap stuff, we
Mhm.
would work for other artists, and we'd bring the horn section in, and a lot of them didn't know what a trombone was. These rappers, they would lose their mind when they saw that. Oh, snap, you see that instrument? Look, it goes out like this. Oh, it was like, dude, you never saw a trombone, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Um,
I could identify with that growing up in the Bronx. I
yeah,
mean, I don't think I really saw a trauma. I mean, no, that's not true because I was kind of like listening, but I could see that happening.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, the generation from the 70s on, they had all these other things to get into. Um, so it was difficult. Like I said, I was kind of forced to go the education way, but I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
Now, the young guys today have something that I don't know how old you are, but we didn't have, which is YouTube.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I didn't have that. I'm way older than that.
Dude, I
Unbelievable.
I worked a little bit for Jazz House Kids out of Montclair while I was teaching in Newark. They used to come to my school. I became one of their teachers, and as soon as I took the job to teach one of their classes, I started getting all of these calls for sessions, and I was traveling, and it's like I had to miss a lot of the classes.
Mm,
So it wasn't good. It wasn't good from a professional standpoint for me. So I
right.
quit because I didn't want to, you know, mess them up. But while I was there, I heard some of the best high school players around. And one of the guys, after a performance, I had to talk to him. So he came off stage and I said, yo, man, where did you learn to play like that? And he said, well, you know, Bruce Williams is my teacher. Now, Bruce Williams is a local jazz guy. I call him Bishop, you know, because he's royalty. This cat, he came out of the womb playing saxophone, but he just has such a practice ethic, and he knows his art well. He said, well, Bruce Williams is my teacher. I said, yeah, but how long you been studying with him? He said, oh, maybe 6 months. I said, okay, well, what'd you do before that? He said, I learned songs. I transcribed solos and stuff from YouTube.
That's right.
He would go on YouTube and listen to all the jazz greats and sit in his room and learn their stuff.
Yeah.
So for those people that didn't go to college, now with this YouTube generation, man, as you can see, I have a little studio here and I'm learning Logic. YouTube is teaching me how to use Logic. So people that don't go to school do the YouTube thing. And there's a little bit of a decline right now in students going to be music teachers because the job market is changing and there isn't as much of a call for certain types of music teachers like there used to be. I came in the late 70s and after the Police tour in the 80s, I started teaching. And right after we did the Rolling Stone stuff, that was when I started working at Bayonne High School. And I still had that rock thing going. I can remember going to school in leather pants. What teacher comes to school in leather pants? The kids love me, man. They were like, man, this dude is cool.
That's right.
So out of that, I was able, my music director, Miss Joan Rosen, really gave me a bit of a free rein. And I was like, Joan, why are you so nice to me? She said, Dave, I see that you have an inherent love for teaching and you genuinely care about your kids. And the principal at the time, Dr. Wanko, I said the same thing to him. Yo, why are you hooking a brother up? He said, you are the representation of Bayonne High School. And when you go to these marching band competitions and parades and you take my kids to Virginia for competitions, you're representing my school. You're making us look good. Yeah. So I really got into that. And I started a program, which I had an article on my Facebook page. Joan let me start a real jazz band class. At the time, there were only 2 other schools in the entire state that did this, and I had met them at competitions. So their bands were so good, like I asked the band director, I said, man, how you get these guys playing like this? He said, well, we have a class. I see them 5 days a week. I was like,
exactly.
I practice 1 day a week after school. Okay. So then I found the other guy and I started comparing notes. So I kind of drafted a little bit of a curriculum. I do recall Dennis Argel helping me with some of that stuff. And we put together a jazz curriculum where the kids would have a chart day where we sight read, where we played just charts. They'd have a jazz history day where we learned jazz history. They'd have an improv day. And we rotated those days because I saw them, every day. Now, the best thing that came out of that was about 5 of those students, because of the way we worked in class, they caught the music bug. And they decided they wanted to be music teachers.
Wow, you see?
And Mike Fermento, I
know Mike.
Mike owns Piero's with his brother.
Yeah.
He was the drummer in my band. He's a music teacher.
Yeah.
Margaret,
I know Mike. Yeah.
yeah, Margaret Cirillo. I think her last name is Pepe now. She played piano and clarinet. She was in that band. A quick Margaret story. Eddie Daniels is a famous clarinetist. And I transcribed a good portion of Eddie Daniels' clarinet solo because I wanted to do that type of song at the jazz band competitions because I had a small band. And I was going up against guys like J.P. Stevens, I mean, these guys came in with full-size jazz bands like Ray Charles had. They had full-size bands like that. And 80% of their students took private lessons. And their private teachers would write out solos for these guys, wouldn't let them solo themselves. So they would come in just playing like professionals.
Right.
Now there's a good side to that and a bad side. You have to let the kids
you got a little freedom there.
Yeah, let them fall and scrape their knees and stuff. But that wasn't happening. They were about winning competitions. So I transcribed this Eddie Daniels clarinet thing. It took Margaret 2 years to learn it. All right. The year she learned it, we went into a jazz competition in Carteret. And all of the big bands would go to this jazz competition. The first year we went, we came in 13 out of 14 bands. The second year we went, we came in 6 out of 13 bands. The third year we went, we came in 5th out of 14 bands. The fifth year we went about 6 years. The 5th year we went, we won.
Oh.
And we won doing the Eddie Daniels, Margaret playing that burning clarinet solo. And we brought in a singer and we did What Is Hip from Tower of Power.
Oh, nice.
So the judges they were blown away. And the dudes in the band, they pulled the prank on me that now when I look back, I laugh, but it wasn't funny that night. The singer put on sunglasses. And he came and he had Mike or one of the drummers, the percussionist, hold his arm and bring him out on stage. He was acting like he was blind. Right? So he starts singing and he's walking towards the edge of the stage. Now he can see, so he knew where the edge was. But the people in the audience, they were like, oh.
Oh, man, I can see why that would upset you.
Oh, I mean, I was a pretty free-going guy, but come on.
Yeah.
But it was an hilarious gimmick. Did that make the judges say, oh, we feel sorry for these guys, we're going to let them win? I talked to one of the judges afterwards, and Frank Elmo was his name. And he said, nah, you guys are by far the best band. The next year, they had 3 new judges.
Wow.
And Frank they never called him back. I don't know about the other 2 guys, but I know they never called Frank back because they let this little small band from Bayonne beat all these big bands. But that was one of the highlights of my teaching career. And that was awesome. that turned into the Margaret story. We wound up going to Canada or Virginia, and she won Best Jazz Soloist playing that clarinet solo.
Wow.
So she played clarinet and piano, and she was one of the best sight readers I had. She came in my band when she was in the 8th grade. So we said Mike, Margaret, then Vinny Downs, who's a classical guitarist. He teaches at Bayonne High School now. And I had the pleasure of playing on one of his records, and he's done maybe 4 solo projects on his own.
Wow.
Vinny Downs, Joe Reichert, who was also a drummer. He became a music teacher. He's teaching out in California. I think I'm forgetting somebody. Don't worry, they'll let me know. But I know 4 or 5 of the music teachers in that jazz band class became music teachers because it was a whole love thing.
Right.
You know,
I think that's the probably the missing element. If you know, for the if music teachers are not really expanding right now, it's probably because there aren't people like you doing exactly things like that. You know, because it's, I think, because when it gets into a system, you know,
Right.
and you know how the system operates,
Right.
you know, they'll tend to kind of like shift things. So I admire that a lot, and I think that that's one of the things that we really should probably start focusing on, as far as getting young people interested in becoming teachers, and
Well,
music teachers, and
yes.
performers,
Yes.
and
No, I
yeah,
agree totally. But
yeah.
let me cut in because we're our time is running out. Um,
I got time. I mean, unless
yeah.
you got to go somewhere, I don't want to keep you.
um, one of the things I like to say to all the music teachers out there, or the people that are thinking about being music teachers, is you got to think outside of the box, and you
Yes.
have to be creative to pull these kids in. Now,
Mhm.
I'm working in Newark. I have an 8th grade. They play no instruments. They don't want to be in my class. And it was South Street School. South Street. And I had a good time in Newark. I taught in Newark the last 6 years of my career. And my last year, South Street was a brand new school with a new principal, Miss Cruz. And she just left me alone. So I have these 8th graders. I got all these instruments. The music teacher, the principal before her, oh man, he'll kill me if I forget his name. Mr. Nazario. Mr. Nazario knew he was leaving. So in most districts, if you go to a new building that has nothing, they get a big budget to buy desks, to buy janitorial equipment, to buy books, to buy musical instruments. He used to DJ a little bit when he was younger. So he was fond of music, and he was fond of violins. So, not to let the cat out of the bag, but I went butt wild in the music store. I felt like a rat in a cheese factory. I bought everything. So I had all these instruments in my room, and we're doing general music, which I'm teaching them about the classics and this. And these 8th graders looking at me like, really? You think we're going to learn this? We're gonna wind up tying you up, duct taping you, and we're going to put on YouTube and watch some videos with some curses on it. Then what you going to do? So I was running my brain saying, what can I do? So there was a thing where you couldn't have cell phones in school, right?
Right.
So somebody had their cell phone in their bag, one of the girls, and she had it next to her chair, and it went off, and it said, bum 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 beep bump, bump 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 bum bump 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 bump. That was the ringtone.
Right.
So I'm screaming at her, what are you doing? You got your cell phone on that. Hurry up. But wait a minute. Did you hear that ringtone? I kind of like that ringtone. I said, do you guys like that ringtone? They said, yeah, Mr. Watson, that's a common ringtone. I said, you know what? I'm going to write a song to that ringtone. And if I write a song to that, will you guys learn how to play these instruments so we could put together a percussion ensemble and play this song for the spring concert? They was like, yeah, let's go. So for the vibraphones and the xylophones, I gave them the melody, bum 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 bum, and then I built all this percussion stuff around it, and we did it at the concert. Now, my principal was like, Dave, I like everything you did, the violins and the people singing and all of that. She said, but the thing that really touched my heart was those 8th graders, because I know them. They know nothing about music, but they all, except one of the kids, did play drums, and one of the girls played a little piano. And as we were rehearsing, they started doing some stuff, and I was like, yo, let's keep that in the song. So I let them put in some of their originality when they were just messing around.
Right.
But it gave them a sense of purpose and worth, and our principal liked that number out of all the stuff we did.
Wow. Again, it's a testament to someone who loves music and loves teaching and loves children and just loves creating. You know what I mean? And that's who you are. And I appreciate you, man. That's freaking awesome. Let me and I don't want to keep you too long, but you had a Santana story.
Okay, you remember.
And then I want to hear a little bit about the Police tour and how that was, and then Alicia Keys, and then I'll let you go.
Okay, yeah, but we also have to talk about my new project.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's of course.
And you're supposed to be playing some music, yo.
That's right. That's right. I have it queued up.
So let's start with Santana. Two quick stories. As you know, Dennis worked with him. And Dennis is a dear friend of ours from the 80s. And he played on some of that Sugar Hill stuff. And he likes cigars, but his wife hates him smoking. Shh.
Okay.
So he told us while he was working with Santana, and you all appreciate this being a musician, Santana would tour for 5 weeks. Then he would take 5 weeks off.
Oh, wow.
Then he would tour for 5 weeks. That was his rotating schedule.
Really? I didn't know that.
Now, musicians, when I was working with the Police, we did 2 shows a day off, 2 shows a day off, 3 shows a day off. And that was it throughout the entire tour. With Alicia Keys on her last tour, we did 103 shows. Did you hear me? 103 shows in 30 countries in the span of 1 year.
Wow.
So you figure out how many days there are in a year, and we did 103 shows in 30 countries. All right. And Santana's ass is doing 5 weeks. Then he's chilling. That is so great because you get to recharge your batteries, spend some time with your families. I can't tell you how many people got divorced because they became touring musicians.
Yeah.
They're away from home and their wives stepped out on them or left because they weren't home raising the kids. It's a tough life.
It is.
If you have children. So that's one of my Santana stories. My other story is some of the people that my students that I met at Bayonne High School in the 80s and 90s became like my children. And 4 names stick out. Ralph Muro was a sax player. He and I still ride bikes today. Anthony Senator, who's another Bayonne guy, who's a sweetheart, one of them big heavyset Italian dudes with the cigar. You know, he looks real mean, but he's a sweetheart. And the 2 girls that are still close to my heart, Dawn Daddio and Suzanne McKenna, were in my band. Now, Dawn was like so high, and she played baritone sax. And she took private lessons for free. I didn't charge her because of her home situation. But she took free lessons from me, and I taught her how to read music. And I remember the day that she's trying to understand these notes, and she got it. It was like a Helen Keller moment. She was like, water! Oh, that's a tree. She was like, oh, fuck, I understand. That's an 8th note. This is where quarter notes go. All right. So that was another real heartwarming moment for me. And Suzanne, because she was good friends with Dawn and wanted to be in a marching band, she didn't like clarinet. So she played crash cymbals because nobody wanted to play crash cymbals. So these people became friends of mine then, and we're still friends today. Now you got to rope me in to tell me, why was I telling you this?
Santana.
Oh, Santana. Okay, thank you.
It's okay.
Dawn just retired from the Air Force. She lives in Vegas. And she told me years ago, Doc, when I retire, you're going to have to come play at my retirement. So Suzanne and I got plane tickets, and we went to Vegas to Dawn's retirement. And so I played at it. It was nice. So one night we were going out to try to find something to do, and there were tickets to a Santana show. Real expensive. But I had never seen Santana live, and I told the girls, I said, this is on my bucket list. I mean, we got to do this. They did it for me. They said, okay, we'll go. So we went to see Santana. They enjoyed some of it, but I was like, slobbering. I loved it. So seeing Santana on stage, I hadn't toured with Alicia Keys since 2008. And this was maybe 2 years ago that we did this, right? So I had 10 years of being off the road. Going to that Santana concert gave me the bug again. It made me want to travel again. And it's a bit of a curse, but Santana brought that out in me.
Yeah.
It made me want to be back on the road.
I love Santana. Yeah, I saw Santana. I paid whatever it was at the time. I took my wife, and we were in the front, actually 2 rows back.
Wow.
He was right there. And at one point during the show, because I was wearing a hat like Santana wears, and he kind of looked down and he smiled at me, and I was like, all right, that's it.
Yeah.
He kind of like smiled. He was like, I was like, yeah, wow. Yeah, big Santana fan. That's awesome. So let's get some music. Tell me a little bit about your project. I know it was you mentioned you're tipping your hat to all these wonderful artists that you admire throughout your career. What's tell me a little bit about this particular song that you have here.
Okay, I just started working on the project, and I think I'm going to do 5 songs, do an EPK. I'm tipping my hat to people that I've worked with, and I'm also tipping my hat to music that I admired. The song that you have, which isn't finished yet, the vocals aren't on it, the song was written by Skip Adams, who lives in Bayonne. I co-wrote the song, and Hubert Eves IV produced it. I played all of the saxophones, and Joe Romano played trumpet. It reminded me of Marvin Gaye. So I'm having a vocal come in to do a few Marvin Gaye, hey, baby, woo, to do some of his hooks.
Yeah.
And I'm calling the song Marvin Stay.
Marvin Stay. Yeah, I saw that. That's great. Do you mind if we play just a little bit of it?
Well, hold off for that because we're about to close, and you wanted to talk a little bit about the police and a little bit about
Alicia I mean, Keys. I don't want to. I mean, we're probably gonna we'll do another part at some point, a 2-parter, maybe in the future at some point. I'd love to have you back.
Yeah, that's a good idea because it's hard for me to cut these stories short.
Yeah. Well, I don't want you to. That's why.
Cool.
So yeah, just tell me a little bit about the police, and we'll go into some of your music, and then we'll schedule something else.
The police gave me the opportunity to play at one of the US festivals.
Mm-hmm.
Google it, baby. US Festival. There were two, and it was in California, and we had to be flown in by helicopter. And there were 250,000 people at the show. So imagine what it feels like standing on stage, looking out onto 250,000 people. And I was 24 years old.
Holy cow.
And because music, travels in time, as the people would clap, the people closest to you for maybe a half a block, they were in sync with the music. Then as it went farther, their claps got slower and slower. So when you went through the whole crowd, it looked like a live wave moving through the audience. And that doesn't give it a good explanation. It was one of my biggest sobering moments as a musician.
Wow, that is amazing. Jesus.
So that's my only police story. I did talk about Alicia with 30 shows. I mean, 30 countries, 130 shows. I do have a lot more stuff to talk about her because she's a sweetheart.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
so let's do a part 2, yo.
Let's do a part 2. Absolutely. I would love that. Absolutely. So Okay, so you told us about the song a little bit. Do you mind if I just play a little bit of it?
Please do.
All right. No, let me see. I got it over here on my little. Hopefully, you let me know if you hear it.
Okay. Yep. And I'm going to say good night while the song is playing. And I'm going to hit the little boy's room. Love you, brother.
Take care, man. All right. Well, that, ladies and gentlemen, is David Doc Watson. There's Chopshorns. This is his new track, and I'm just really grateful that he took the time to sit with us, and hopefully we'll do another part because I'm sure he's got a tremendous amount of stories. Unfortunately, I wanted to get some questions, but his stories were just so great that I just thought, let him tell his stories, and at some point we'll get him back and maybe talk a little bit more about the industry and being in the industry and seeing what that's like. But anyway, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Appreciate all of you. And again, this track is not finished, so it's not anywhere. He's got to still finish it up. But it's a really cool, funky track. I really like it a lot. And he's back.
I bet you never had anybody walk out on you before.
I thought you were coming back, so I was just closing out.
Close out, brother. Close out.
All right. Thank you so much, Doc. I really appreciate you so much. We'll definitely do it again. And don't go away yet. I'm just gonna get out of YouTube, and then I'll say goodbye to you for the evening. All right, everyone. Thank you so much, John Henry Soto. Please subscribe to the show. Hit the links down there. Share it. Hit the thumbs button. I appreciate you all so much. Appreciate it. And I'll see you all again tomorrow night at 9:30. Take care, folks. Peace.